the rich.
It's outrageous. If you're rich or your company pays for you to come into the city, it's great. Traffic's down. But if you're the average New Yorker or someone from New Jersey and you're coming in, you can't afford it.
Supposing you worked in a shoe shop or you worked in a restaurant as a waiter and you have to come into Manhattan and they're taking, many dollars out of your pocket. Can't afford to do it.
Governor Hochul rode the 7 train with MTA Chair Janno Lieber. As he pointed out, new lighting, more cops, and other safety upgrades. It was an in-your-face attempt to send a message to arch-enemy Sean Duffy, the Federal Transportation Secretary, and his never-ending criticisms of subway service as he tries to kill congestion pricing.
And so if you want people to ride public transportation, then make public transportation beautiful. Make it safe. Felony crime on the subway is up 9% this year alone.
Does the president actually have the power to pull congestion pricing, or does he need to actually convince the governor to do this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Christine, because here's the deal. He actually does have the power.
So New York City is now suing to stop President Trump from taking away their loot machines, which have been up and running for several months. But what nobody's talking about is that although these driving taxes have been rolled out and put into effect, none of the promises they were supposed to deliver have been kept. First, people were told that in exchange for paying to exercise one's freedom of mobility in a car, the MTA would get all those taxes and make some big changes, which would involve turning the subway into a shining public transit system the world would be jealous of. But anybody who's visited the subway recently will tell you that those promises, they haven't happened at all. In fact, things down there are getting worse. And it's not just the infrastructure which continues to rot away and collapse on a daily basis. In spite of the fact that New York City has been taxing cars to fix this place for the last 5 months, no, it's also becoming less safe. And today, assaults are 50% higher than they were just 5 years ago. And that brings us to the real reason the president has to step in and shut off these cameras. They were turned on in exchange for promises that were either fake to begin with or that our leaders have no intention or ability to keep. But they are keeping the money these things make every single day, which the Trump administration now wants permanently disabled, threatening not just New York City, but the entire state with a funding freeze on infrastructure projects if the city doesn't stop stealing from the poor to improve the neighborhoods of rich people by reducing traffic and pollution in Manhattan at the expense of every other borough in New York and every city and town across America. Because as you're about to see, these driving cameras, they don't just pose a threat to New York City. Oh no, they pose a massive threat to our entire country. So here we are in the New York subway, or as I like to call it, the land of broken promises, all of which we were told would be kept as long as every car on the road had to pay some sort of fee just to drive down it. But look at this place, it's falling apart. We got signs talking about how it's improving, but even those signs are falling apart, which is a sign that if the president doesn't step in and shut this thing down, other cities and towns across the country could try a similar scheme, making promises in order to implement new taxes, which they don't intend to keep either.
About congestion pricing, you have been going head-to-head with about getting rid of it. She's saying the feds have nothing to do with this.
Federal highways does have a role because these are federal roads in New York City, so we do have a role. I think this is the first time in American history that there's no free pathway to get into certain areas. There's no free pathway.
So this driving tax, it's $9 per vehicle, and it applies to every car that enters Manhattan. It was passed on a lie, and if this thing is allowed to stand, this will certainly not be the last time in American history it happens. And that's because the playbook is so simple. New York City has one of the worst public transit systems in the entire world. It's gross, it's unsafe, it's falling apart, and people down here are worried that something bad could happen to them. That's why folks try to avoid this place. Not to mention, even though this place gets $20 billion a year to operate, there are still folks living on trains and in platforms who don't seem to benefit at all from the endless resources that get dumped into this place. But here's the thing, everybody in New York was promised that the moment congestion pricing kicked in, everything down here was going to change and we were going to have a sleek, modern, wonderful subway system, which has not happened. In fact, everything that happens down here is a lie. Like these old signals, which they always say they're modernizing. Signal modernization has been a claim they've made for almost 15 years at this point. Yet instead of that, what tell us how bad the trains are screwed up and how there are endless service suspensions, revealing continually being fed about the subway and how it's going to change aren't changing anytime soon.
The God of Thunder!
It's great traffic's down, right? They're raising money for MTA, but if you're the average New Yorker or someone from New Jersey and you're coming in, you can't afford it. We don't have roads just for the elites. They're for everybody.
Okay, stop it right there. We were promised that none of this would exist once the city got its congestion pricing. Guess what? Not only does it exist, the people running the subway are saying the money they get isn't enough. They started wanting more the second the city got brand new. The fact that they're now threatening the general public with service disruptions if they don't get more is just laughable. In fact, it sure makes the subway look like fixing it is a never-ending scam that will always line the pockets of the elites and well-connected in this city. And although this scheme has been allowed to go on for decades, now that drivers and cars are going to be taxed so that it continues, the president has to step in and do something. Because if he doesn't, scams like this will soon perpetuate across the country, while the general public wait around scratching their heads wondering why their lives aren't getting any better.
This is a fundraiser for MTA. Part of it is to get rid of congestion. When you listen to the governor, she talks about how much she can raise. If it was about congestion, what they would have done is a study to say, how much do we have to charge to reduce congestion? How much? That's a separate study.
So he's right. If the plan to tax cars was actually about bringing down congestion, you could use a calculator and some estimates to figure out what you'd need to charge to get the desired amount of traffic without overcrowded streets. For example, today we have a $9 toll, which was originally $15 and then reduced because of backlash. However, no study was ever done that told us what the expected reductions in traffic actually were at various price points. Literally, the toll was made to be as high as possible without riots in the streets during an election year. At the same time, if this were actually about public transit, or if New York City were even capable of running a public transit operation, none of what we see down here would actually exist. This place would be a lot different. But sadly, that's not the case. And while the subway ends up doubling as a homeless shelter for neglected New Yorkers, felonies and assaults are also rising through the roof. All of which should be a huge red flag for anyone considering a car tax to fund this place. It's been obvious from the very beginning that every promise from a politician about this rotting hunk of junk would be broken, or just flat out incapable, because a system underneath all of this exists which just takes every cent it gets and throws it right in the garbage. However, the federal government is ultimately in charge of the streets of New York, which means they've got the ability to step in and dictate what happens up there, even if the city says it needs the money for down here. They don't. Those in charge of other parts of America are going to figure out how this scheme works, and pretty soon all of us will be afflicted by what you see right here.
Federal roads, right? Federal permitting, right? So the federal government has a role in saying what is legal and what is not. And the bottom line is, you can't just use your roads for the elites. And that's what we have right now. And if you want people to ride a subway, make it clean, make it safe. So it's very simple.
So here's the thing. The federal government, they're in charge of the roads. But if they let little cities and towns all over the place make up different rules for how they're going to operate, we're going to have big problems. And it is legitimately wrong to scam average people by promising that you're going to spend money on their behalf and never doing it. Now, of course, many of you watching are going to say that's what the government does already, but that's precisely the point. At some point, somebody's got to step in and say enough is enough. And that's what's happening, because if it doesn't happen, it won't be long before somebody somewhere, even in a part of the country without a subway, figures out that, hey, if we tax cars, we could fund better bus service, right? And it's been speculated that if New York's congestion taxes don't go away, there will be retaliatory taxes in New Jersey for drivers over there. Letting this stand could be a recipe for all-out mayhem and disaster on the streets of our country everywhere, as embittered localities engage in a war of attrition, taxing each other's populations on a regular basis and pocketing everything. Now, sure, token amounts of money do make their way into the subway to give us things like this flashing light seen through the window of a relatively new subway car. But even though the promise is for 80% of the taxation money to come down here and fix this place, it looks like 0% of it is having any effect. All individuals living in and the richest, nicest, most exclusive parts of New York benefit from quieter streets and less vehicular pollution, which, as you're about to see, is the other part of the reason why the federal government has to step in and end the games New York City has been playing.
Hold fast, my friends.
Simply magical.
You've got me.
Here's another string of these cameras right up here, and as you're about to see, these things benefit wealthy parts of the city in more ways than just traffic congestion. They outsource all of the issues that were taking place here to other parts of the city, which just so happen to be less affluent, like Queens, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. But our leaders have a problem. They don't have enough money, and they never will. And every single year they get boatloads of it from the federal government, who also approves what they do on our streets to begin with. And before we get into how these things hurt neighborhoods where the rich don't live and will never visit, we've got to look at how the Trump administration wants to shut them down for good.
Tolling must end no later than May 21st, 2025. And Duffy today adding a new threat. If congestion pricing remains, no further advanced construction authorizations for projects within the borough of Manhattan.
So this is where push comes to shove. The federal government
your
isn't
hero.
gonna allow the city
I'm
to
not
do
judging.
any more advanced construction projects here whatsoever
don't
if they
have to
keep
be a
these
witch
things
to
up and
find a
operating.
match.
Because as you're about to see, not only has the
does help.
implementation of these never been about congestion, which you see right here on the screen, the promises delivered by these cameras are a one-way street of benefits that just go to areas where rich people live. Like the people who live in these high-rises in Manhattan, their lives are a little bit better off, as there is considerably less congestion going on here on 42nd Street than there ever was in the past, along with less road noise from
I've made
massive
my
trucks
share of
like this
mistakes.
idling all
But
over the
I am
place.
fighting
But here's the
every day to make
problem. All of that pollution, all of that congestion, all of that road noise, it's got to
30
go
seconds
somewhere.
before you
And if
attack.
it's no longer
Get
happening
ready.
outside of these apartments, where is it happening? Well, as you're about to see, the answer to that question is one our leaders desperately do not want you to know about.
That's too
The
awesome.
face of chronic respiratory
The
illness
barriers
in the
between
South
dimensions
A
are
lot of
breaking
people
down.
mention the Bronx.
It's
I know
up
we
to
don't know
us
what a
to
computer
protect.
looks like, but we do know what bad air quality looks like.
It looks like this. 1 in
The battle
5
starts
school
in
children
5,
in the South
4,
Bronx have
3,
asthma.
2,
Stephanie Polanco
1.
watches her child struggle with
All you need to do is
respiratory
capture the
issues.
mission
She
area.
thinks it's
Got
normal
it?
to have asthma because that's how frequent it is.
So look at that. While people in Manhattan get to breathe cleaner air and have less asthma, people in the Bronx get to have more. What a great trade. Oh yeah, and if the people in the Bronx need to drive into Manhattan, they have to pay for it. They're paying for all of this extra pollution. So is everybody in every outer borough. And while they're paying for it, New York City is not keeping its promise of creating the best public transit system the world has ever seen, that's for sure. Somebody left the president a thank you note on this barrel, which has a sign talking about construction projects. I wonder if this means something. The barrels also say power on the sides of them, perhaps referring to the power the president has to cancel congestion pricing and future New York construction projects, which is pretty much the only hope people living in outer boroughs actually have. If this doesn't happen, pollution in working class areas is just going to get worse. Those neighborhoods are going to suffer. Property values could even decline because of all the increased traffic. But the worst part about this is it was never a secret that the pollution of the rich was just going to be sent to other parts of town. And part of the way congestion pricing got through was money was going to be sent to the Bronx for things like air quality monitors that were supposed to keep an eye on how sick all of the extra traffic is actually making people. That's like saying you're going to open a dental clinic at a candy factory where people are just ingesting sugar constantly. That's not really a fix. Sure, you might fill people's cavities faster, but people are getting cavities. See the problem?
To reduce congestion, food here. Environmental justice
You've captured more than half of the mission area. Keep going.
displaying its arsenal of air quality monitors with the state's plan to reduce.
You know, at least the city kept its promise to install the air quality monitors, but that's not necessarily a good thing. If we're monitoring the quality of the air in an entire borough, we know there's going to be a
Chaos
problem.
control.
Studies have already shown a giant cloud of smog is just headed over to that area. That's just terrible. But But here's where this is headed as smog, pollution, and vehicular congestion go up in areas of town that don't have these cameras. Do you know what our leaders are going to propose? Well, it's simple. These cameras worked so well to eliminate those things down here in Manhattan. Let's just roll them out everywhere. We already know people running the subway want more money, and we already know that people are complaining about pollution. Well, the fix is so simple. It's right over there. Just put these on every single road in the entire city, and then the entire state, and then roll them out everywhere to save the planet and take people's money and give it to the government for dubious reasons. And let's say you work and you have to commute by car every day. Well, that's your fee for driving to your place of business. $2,300 is the fee you pay not to risk your life on the subway or to take a car if maybe the subway you live near doesn't have an escalator or an escalator that works. Does that sound fair to you? What do you think? Let me know. Are these taxation cameras coming to the rest of the country at some point if they're not stopped
30 seconds
here
before
and
you
now? Is
attack.
the president doing
Get
the right
ready.
thing by taking back control of New York City's roads? Let me know.
When I see
you in the
someone
next
with
video.
powers like yours, I think, wow. I mean, how can I compare?
Don't compare. You just spread your light.
One problem that's been persistent, homeless on trains, making passengers feel uncomfortable. We're gonna put in some welcome
The battle
centers.
starts in
Let
5,
people have a place to
4,
go to get warmed
3,
up, take care of them,
2,
and then be
1.
persuaded.
So the newest plan to fix the subway involves building shelters for the homeless inside terminals like
took us a
this
long
one.
time to
And with
find that
thousands living in the subway on a full-time basis, proponents think building places of refuge down here is a no-brainer. But this is going to mean anybody who wants to ride the train has to venture through a permanent homeless shelter.
Sidewalks of Herald Square, homeless outreach workers are pleading with a man with bare feet.
Maximum pulse!
Even though ridership is up and crime is down, subway commuters stay vigilant.
I feel it's safe, however, there are some times where you see someone acting not right.
According to the most recent MTA police data, felony assaults on the subway are up 56% from 2019. As of today, $45 million continues to keep the National Guard in the subways and $30 million for homeless outreach support, including the creation of designated intake centers.
This breaks my heart right here. This is a guy, he's got a Skittles box on his head. Look at him. This is a picture-perfect example of why we should not be saying he has the right to be out there. He doesn't know he needs help.
And today, even as the governor took questions from reporters, we saw a man stretched out sleeping on the other end of the subway car.
Us against the world!
So, as New York's leaders tout how great the subway is getting, homelessness remains a persistent issue down here. But what nobody's talking about is that if you turn our subway stations into homeless shelters, you might end up bringing more people down here, when instead the plan should be to help people get out of the subway and live somewhere else. But before we get into why this new plan may not solve anything, it's important to understand that many of the folks down here sadly have nowhere else to go. And as dangerous as the subway is, with assaults 50% higher today than in 2019, many of the homeless down here say the city's shelters are even worse. And when people feel safer down here than up there, you know you've got a big problem. Especially since armed individuals have been committing serious crimes in the subway on a regular basis for the last 6 months, scaring commuters and making even the most seasoned New Yorker think twice before boarding a train or sitting next to someone, because at any moment one could find themselves in the presence of someone behaving erratically. And that brings us to the real reason why making these permanent and shelters won't reverse or change any of the subway's problems. The issues down here exist because our whole city is falling apart and nothing's being done about it. That goes for the streets as well as the subway itself. And critics say the whole reason folks live down here is because outlaws force them to, because they make it impossible for the billions New York City has access to actually help those displaying obvious signs of mental illness, leaving them down here to fend for themselves. But there's a problem. The city's options for building shelters or outreach centers in subway terminals are severely limited. And as you're about to see, there's nowhere to put them except right in the path of everyone trying to ride the train.
Another epic victory! Big win!
So right over here at the...
President Trump recently embarked on an historic trip to the Middle East in search of trade deals and alliances. He found both, but he also found something else, something more powerful. He found love.
The right heroes could make all the difference.
You don't have to be a witch to find the magic in this world, but it does help.
It's Weekend Update with Colin Jost and Michael Shea.
Listener Conte's trying to get you banned. Just heads up. Well, of course she is. This is now the level of accountability and the level of power that I have. Okay? I talked about her video. I didn't watch it. I didn't link people to it. Her video was already reported and taken down from YouTube. If you take up action against another person and you try to get this person like deplatformed, canceled, you deserve this. You do. You deserve this. This is what you deserve.
For context, we posted almost 10,000 videos on YouTube. And never once received a community strike. Do you have any idea how bad she had to mess up to get YouTube to take down her video for harassment and bullying?
In fact, and this might not be a surprise to anybody, but she's even trying to get me in trouble now. This is it. You can report Asmongold, report Twitch, report me. Twitch, are you cool with this? She did get harassed and she deserved it. So she's talking about bringing rape and death threats on myself. By the way, this has never happened, and I never would do that because it's disgusting. But you had no problem retweeting things that are effectively telling me seppuku. So where is the logic here? Oh, that's right, there isn't any. No, I'm not sorry about you getting harassed. I don't give a fuck because I didn't do it. Like, she's writing articles trying to get people to platforms all the time. She thinks that writing things doesn't have anything to do with me getting harassed. The only person that can get harassed is her. I never get harassed, right? Nobody ever sends me death threats. I get harassed every fucking day. Hassan gets harassed every fucking day. Welcome to the fucking show. You're rude. You're obnoxious. You're like, oh, fight me.
If you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
This is embarrassing, yes. And turn this into, I think you deserve death threats. Everybody can see through this instantaneous. Everybody knows that's not what I mean. This is exactly what a fly bully is. They sit around, they push people around, they attack them, they malign them, do whatever they can to make this person look bad. And then the moment that they get any pushback, if you step into the kitchen, you're gonna get heat. It doesn't matter who you are, and if you don't like it, get the fuck out.
Maximum
Pulse! That's the way it is.
Might I suggest a different kitchen?
A nice deep
big
freeze.
beauty.
You found my weak spot. Better stop that vehicle!
New tonight, Immigration and Customs Enforcement announces it's detained more than 200 migrants who entered the country illegally last week in our area.
So ICE teams are stepping up their game, tracking down criminals all across the Northeast. Recently arresting over 200 people living illegally in and around New York City in shock raids of homes and apartments. But while this is going on, efforts are underway to stop the Trump administration from deporting anyone, even though some of the people getting arrested have horrible track records and put everyone around them in danger.
More than
with the amazing Spider-Man!
Convictions or are facing charges for crimes like assault.
Maximum Pulse!
Avenue in the Bronx is where law enforcement sources say a 22-year-old member of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua was picked up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents last week. She is one of 206 people arrested across the New York City area in an operation that the acting ICE director says targeted the most dangerous alien offenders in some of the most crime-infested neighborhoods.
More protests against the administration. New Yorkers gathering this afternoon to make their voices heard loud and clear. I'm not saying you can't get rid of anybody yet, but maybe start at the top. People are scared to go to church. People are scared to go to work. People are scared to take their kids to school.
I don't know why we want to romanticize what dangerous gangs are. They're dangerous gangs. And we're going to do everything possible to remove these dangerous gangs off our streets.
121 of the 206 apprehended had significant criminal convictions.
just arrested over 200 people illegally living in New York, including gang members. But what nobody's talking about is that while America is happy about this, progressive activists in cities like New York are very upset about it, and they're doing everything they can to make sure it stops happening. Because for some reason, they don't think these gang members are actually criminal. Instead, they think the only criminal is the one who recently moved from Trump Tower to the White House with the promise to rid America of dangerous individuals by any means necessary. And Trump's doing it not only by raiding homes and apartments in sanctuary cities, but also by locking down the southern border like never before, deploying U.S. military troops in armored vehicles and helicopters on the front lines of America's battle with illegal immigration, to track down and capture anyone attempting to enter the country without permission, something which has been a big deterrent, stopping people from entering our country who shouldn't be here in the first place. But that brings us to the real reason these ICE raids that just took place in New York City and in Boston and in Virginia have so-called advocates so upset. They reveal that an open border anyone can cross is a bad idea because it allows criminals intent on harming Americans and legal U.S. residents a path to do so. And once they're inside the country, they engage in illegal behavior like this.
Police say Brenda Garcia was driving from Houston to Maryland with 8 other people in the car, but there was no luggage in the car, and that led police to suspect this was a human trafficking incident. The uniform for a temporary protective order against him.
So that guy right there, he is the poster child for this entire war on illegal immigration. The Trump administration says he's a gang member. He was sent to El Salvador's mega prison, but politicians and, again, activists in this country are desperate to get him back in America for some reason. And apparently his wife confirmed he's one of the people in this clip right here being moved into that state-of-the-art prison facility designed for gang members. And even though this guy was in the U.S. illegally and is covered in MS-13 tattoos and was arrested with other confirmed members of MS-13, there are people out there who prefer to refer to him as a Maryland father instead of a criminal gang member. And as you're about to see, this is not an isolated incident because there are some people in America who think that every single gang member here who ICE takes down is in.
Omar Brenda Garcia, who arrived illegally from El Salvador in 2011 and was arrested in 2019.
Fantastic! If he's guilty of any of it, I don't even know if any of the 300 are guilty. I mean, I assume some of them might be.
So here we have a protest in Midtown Manhattan, and the protesters, they don't think anybody that ICE has taken down is actually guilty of anything. And they really think ICE is out there arresting people, sweeping them off the streets, and it's all by accident. And this is supported by their belief that America has spiraled into some sort of dictatorship because a president elected specifically on his promise to remove criminals from our country who are already here without permission has somehow usurped democracy and is going against the will of the people, taking away everyone's rights, even though reality tells a different story.
This building on DeKalb Avenue in the Bronx is where law enforcement sources say a 22-year-old member of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua was picked up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents last week. She is one of 206 people arrested across the New York City area in an operation that the acting ICE director says targeted the most dangerous alien offenders in some of the most crime-infested neighborhoods.
So in New York City, ICE raided an apartment building where well-known gang members were residing while they committed crimes throughout the city. But I guess this building in the Bronx isn't a place any of the people attending protests in Midtown have ever been or lived themselves. Here is a photo of the woman that was arrested. She's a gang member. One of the neighbors says people like this have no moral compass. If she needed money or knew there was an elderly person living in the building, she'd have no problem breaking in and stealing from that person. These are people who put everyone around them in danger. They need to be in jail. On top of that, these criminals, they're traffickers and human exploiters. They're in charge of the crime waves taking over areas of town protesters can't even find on a map, like Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, where outdoor theft markets line the streets full of stolen goods, being sold by people who might not necessarily want to spend 12 hours a day kneeling on the sidewalk. Yet New York City's protesters class has bought the lie that these individuals haven't done anything wrong, even if they've started all of this out by coming into the country illegally and then doing more illegal things once they're here.
I don't know why we want to romanticize what dangerous gangs are. They're dangerous gangs. And we're going to do everything possible to collaborate with federal officials to remove these dangerous gangs off our streets.
ICE says with federal partners like the FBI and the U.S. Marshals, 121 of the 206 apprehended had significant criminal convictions. The NYC acting field office director says the majority have criminal histories.
You know something, Mayor Adams is right, but he's probably going to lose his campaign for re-election because he's saying stuff like this. He says he's going to cooperate with the enemy of these protesters, with ICE. And when you look at these crowds of protesters, you see people who've been brainwashed by mainstream news and do not think for themselves. But sadly, in New York, this is where all the money in politics comes from, and these are the people who are going to decide the next election here. Even though all of these criminals are in the country illegally, have committed crimes and are dangerous enemies of America. They're not here to live the American dream. They're here to exploit our laws. And these protesters don't think they've done anything wrong by coming here and doing just that, while living openly as criminal members of their community.
A suspected gang member with warrants for kidnapping, burglary, and a gun crime, authorities told us.
We are undefeatable!
Around 5:30 a.m., heavily armed agents raid this apartment building and find the suspect and 3 other male associates, all handcuffed and without incident. Also there in the residence, 3 children.
So here we have ICE agents raiding an apartment in the Bronx, and who do they find? Criminal gang members living with children for some reason. And the neighbors of this building had no idea a dangerous criminal wanted in multiple states was living right next to them. They're crossing paths with this individual every single day. Now, obviously, the people holding these signs and protesting these raids think criminals like this guy are innocent. After all, they were part of a family living with little children, and now they're separated, and oh, how awful this is. Yet the reality is everyone in proximity to these criminals was in danger. That whole building, all of the people there, are now better off that this guy was taken down by ICE. But as you're about to see, there's an effort, a mainstream narrative that there is some massive uprising and everybody's upset that these gang members are being put in jail.
By the thousands, demonstrators rallied in major U.S. cities. Angry about the Trump administration's deportation agenda.
Everyone should have due process. No one should be just taken away and locked up.
I don't think it matters who you are or what situation you're in. That should concern you now. Due process has been abandoned for everybody. It can be abandoned for you.
Many protesters welcoming.
So due process is guaranteed to Americans under the Constitution. And what you have here is you have these people who are Americans putting themselves in the shoes of criminals who are here illegally and imagining if ICE were to come to my house when I'm in my pajamas and arrest me. They're trying to empathize with these criminals, but the only way they can do that is by creating a fantasy in their minds where American citizens and legal U.S. residents who are entitled to due process don't get it somehow. And every single person at these rallies has rights someone who snuck into the country wearing a mask doesn't have. Yet this is how these people have themselves all riled up. This is how these people have themselves convinced that America is spiraling out of control and has passed the point of no return. Yet the best thing America can do is return people like this back to where they came from.
One of these individuals was so dangerous that we needed the backup of the NYPD to be there in case they went out.
Today's Bronx operation required around 3 days. Law enforcement yielding a handful of arrests.
So here you've got protesters in Midtown screaming about this grave injustice, but the reality is ICE is taking down dangerous criminals who are so unpredictable that they need backup from local police. ICE is overwhelmed. These guys in this armored vehicle with weapons and night vision, they needed backup to take down these gang members. NYPD uniform right here going into the building with them just to make sure that nothing bad happens, and protesters are against getting people like this out.
We're using a law on the books, the statute on the books, to secure the border and remove significant public safety threats and national security threats to this country.
More than 200 people have already been deported under the Alien Enemies Act, sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland father who is in the U.S. illegally but was wrongly deported.
So here we are, back to the guy the mainstream news just will not tell the truth about. And the proof that this guy was a member of a dangerous criminal organization is all over the place. Now, when this guy was first arrested, he was found with rolls of cash and a whole bunch of other stuff that he shouldn't have had. And look at this, he was not alone. He was arrested with 2 other members of MS-13. Apparently, he was wearing merchandise which displayed gang slogans and paraphernalia connecting him to MS-13. And 2 judges found that he was a member of the gang, a finding that has not been disputed by anybody. And this report, which is on the Department of Homeland Security's website, goes on to discuss how the wife of this individual, this Maryland father, was so afraid of him she had a protective order taken out against him. But you're not going to believe what she's now saying about this whole ordeal. Look at that. Unbelievable.
I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
Husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay.
That's the answer? You know what we're probably looking at here is somebody who's been coached, somebody who's been prepared in advance for how to respond to that type of allegation. She's just staring off into space, and that pause is so long. You don't just take out a restraining order on somebody and go to a police station and have all these allegations of how they were a dangerous person to be around and how you're in fear for your safety. That's not an accidental thing at all. But the thing is, this woman is now trapped in the open borders movement in Maryland, and somebody's convinced her to play along. However, the reason the open borders movement thinks this is a winning issue for them is because they can point to the fact that the individual in these pictures right here, who was sent to the El Salvador prison, was never charged with a crime. That must mean he's innocent, right? Well, here we have the story of his arrest back in 2022 when he was killed with 8 other people and suspected human trafficking. It says right here there were 8 other people in the vehicle with this man, and they didn't have any luggage, yet they were driving across state lines. It also says that all of these people gave this gang member's home address as their address, which is weird. And this article goes on to say that the state troopers who pulled him over in this van in this suspicious situation contacted federal law enforcement and were told to let this individual go and not arrest him. That's why he was never charged with a crime, because whoever was running the FBI 2 years ago didn't think it was worth it. And now this person is being held up as the poster child for just how awful and horrible Donald Trump is and how wrong it is that ICE is deporting people. They've got protesters in New York fully convinced every single person in that El Salvador prison is an innocent man. But what do you think? Is ICE out there arresting people who are innocent? Does not being charged with a crime mean somebody isn't a criminal and hasn't done anything wrong, especially when they're already in the country illegally? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.
President Donald Trump. God.
You'll need a top-notch team to win this one.
You don't have to be a witch to find the magic in this world. But it does help.
Honestly, so much comes at us every day with him. I can't even sleep, organize thoughts, eat. And he knows. He knows he's toying with us. Here he is on Tuesday of last week.
We're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what.
Magneto raised me to never stop fighting for what I believe is right.
Oh, good. So we won't know how to
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Should we wear our good pants? Or the ones we piss in?
I can see the hate in your eyes.
But fine. Don't tell us this big announcement.
That's what Magneto says. But
And that announcement will be made either
Fair.
Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave.
Kind hasn't exactly been perfect in any timeline.
The battle starts in 5, 4,
Why are you mentioning
3, 2,
Is it
1.
sweeps week? Is that what this is?
All you need to do is capture the mission area.
We will keep
Got
our
it?
eyes out for any announcement bombshells.
Presents.
And on Friday,
The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion.
So it begins.
So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at.
the government, the United States government, is actively looking at suspending due process and the rule of law. That's a big announcement. Big enough for Stephen Miller to risk bursting into flames because of the touch of God's sunlight.
The only time a president has done it unilaterally without the authorization of Congress was Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War.
That was last. So back when slavery was legal and the treatment for diarrhea was amputation. But that being said, this is a big announcement.
As you know, ability of somebody to challenge the rights of courts is a pretty essential part of the rule of law. So certainly raising a lot of eyebrows with that comment.
Just eyebrows.
I disappear.
The Trump administration is thinking of tearing up the Constitution. So here in Washington, we're hearing a lot of, One legal scholar even said, that's weird. So maybe that's the announcement. Suspension of habeas corpus, unless there's something else.
President Trump is appointing former New York prosecutor Janine Pirro as interim U.S. attorney.
You may say to yourself, well, that can't be the announcement.
This shield will serve me well.
Because that's just not that big a deal. Yet in this new world that we live in, this announcement registers the same as suspending habeas corpus on the eyebrow-meter.
Janine Pirro, a lot of eyebrows are being raised at this pick so far.
This is real firepower!
Hey, Janine!
Rise,
You're
my
gonna be
friend!
the new U.S. attorney in D.C. Yeah, I know! We're surprised, too! That is, by the way, the sound.
I disappear.
Oh, also they're suspending habeas corpus. Tell me. All right. So maybe that's the big announcement. But hey, we've got until today for any other announcements. Was there anything else?
The Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar.
That luxury jumbo jet, which has a value estimated at $400 million, the aircraft would be used by President Trump as a new Air Force One and then transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation shortly before he leaves office.
Extended my deployment.
Qatar is giving us a plane that Trump gets to keep.
Clean up your toys, Mr.
He's like the reverse Oprah. I get a jet. And that's it. I get a jet for my library. This libraries need a jet. Why would your presidential library... hello, I'm calling from Europe.
Judge, jury, the execution
About Trump by Mark. The book was traveling.
Behold, that child!
From Qatar.
It's known as the most luxurious private jet in the world, described as a flying palace. It features the biggest master bedroom in the sky, as well as some very plush living quarters and several private offices. Some of the 9 bathrooms on board have full showers and even a bidet.
Help get that vehicle to its destination.
I didn't even know water could go there. Okay. Holy crap! That is not a plane. It's not a plane.
This is real firepower!
Magneto!
shit out of those carpets.
Battlefield ready again. The moon haunts you!
They're not
Rise, my friends!
Working to undermine us like all of our other Democratic allies.
Qatar is considered an American ally, but it is also an ally of Iran and China and even Hamas.
Oh! Trump's going to take a $400 million jet from people he would expel from Columbia University. I think, you know what? This is shocking. This is shocking. I think I know what this dude might do.
It raises many, many eyebrows to have this sort of deal at all.
Actually, that's how the plane flies. When it comes to Earth's gravity. Obviously, the president would understand that a gift of this magnitude
They ain't
from a
seen
government
nothing
with
yet.
questionable ties to terror organizations, combined with Article 1, Section 9, constitutional prohibition against the president accepting a foreign flying palace, he would understand that that's a legitimate. I'm just kidding. He was appalled.
They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us. I want to pay you $1 billion or $400 million or whatever it is. Well, I can say, thank you very much.
This is real firepower!
Keep up the momentum.
You know the expression, there's no such thing as crazy. That's about being skeptical of the motives of somebody who gives you a sandwich.
Behold, that child!
A sandwich, a BLT. Now, imagine that BLT has an engine, 9 bathrooms, and funds proxy wars. So in the dizzying run-up to this big announcement of the possible suspension of habeas corpus, or maybe the appointment of another Fox News star, or the naked bribery of our highest elected officials, none of those were Trump's big announcement.
President Trump just announced that prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced by 30 to 80% almost immediately. This appears to be the major announcement that the president has been teasing for days.
I have been wanted that for years. Pharma has exploited the American consumer while we have in turn subsidized the whole industry, tax incentives and direct funds. We are in this together. I like this. But without getting into the weeds, explain this thing that I've wanted for a very long time. So long. Like that incredibly dumb.
Drug prices will come down. We're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%. But actually more than that if you think about it in a way mathematically.
Judge, jury, executioner, veto!
If you think about it mathematically.
Born again!
Like Brad, I often think about numbers mathematically.
So close. This is your big
How is this going to work?
The rest of the world's going to have to pay a little bit more, and America's going to pay a lot less. Basically, what we're doing is equalizing. There's a new word that I came up with, which I think is better than equalize.
Europe, Eureka, Euclid. Yeah, there it is. Equalize. I thought it sounded familiar.
The right heroes could make all the difference.
Look.
You don't have to be a witch to find the magic in this world, but it does help.
Look, I would like to think that the tenacious pleadings of progressive leaders like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders helped to make this possible.
We are sick and tired of paying by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs.
I'm going to attack the prices on commonly used drugs. Put
Somewhere in the world is a little girl like I
a cap on the cost of prescription drugs.
Fight for her.
And not one of those child caps. that you can't.
in 30 seconds. Stay strong.
Ryder wins.
Unfortunately, it turns out credit for the biggest, most important announcement in the history of this presidency goes to someone else.
To God
I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's
and belief.
a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman. Seriously overweight.
3, 2, 1. We need to stop that vehicle in its tracks. Here comes trouble.
That took a turn. Top guy, brilliant. You know him, famous, bit of a chugs. Anyway, I'm sure public health covers is a rough day. He's trying to find out. He is saved in Trump's phone as neurotic fat friend. But what else can you tell us about this friend who's very famous, especially?
A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman. Seriously overweight. And he takes the good shot.
Fat shot? Do you read any of your briefings? He takes the fat shot. You know, the fat shot. I got another quick, real estate moment. He takes the dick stick. This guy takes the fat shot. This guy takes the dick stick pill. I'm sorry, continued story. Stuffed this fat up a friend of yours.
And he called me up and he said, President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working.
Yo, Rickles, that is ice cold.
Feel the wrath of the goddess.
Like, oh, I took this fat drug.
This is real firepower!
He's in the middle of a presidential press conference. Trump's talking about drug pricing reform. He's like, hey, when this guy goes to the hospital, the nurse gives him 50 cc's of Crisco. He's fat. Hey, my friend, he's very successful, went to London, and when they saw him, they changed the name of Big Ben to just Ben, because this guy's fat. He's a fat piece of shit, this guy.
I've made my share of mistakes, but I am fighting
Anyway, back
every
to
day to
life-saving
make
drug
amends.
pricing.
Stop them in their tracks.
Again, President Trump, what does any of this have to do with pricing?
He said,
Be right back.
I just paid $88. And in New York, I paid $1,300.
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man!
He said, so I checked. And it's the same box.
Judge,
the same
jury, executioner!
It's the identical pill. This is a great businessman, so but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have. But he was stunned.
Yeah, he was as stunned as he is fat. I mean, oh.
My work here is not
Better stop that vehicle. There's still a
By the way, I
chance
don't know
to
if
stop
anybody
them.
realized, but the fat shot somehow turned into a fat pill. In the middle of the story. That's how you know the story is true.
Now might be a good time
But
to
you know,
stop
whether the
them.
story's true or not, Donald Trump's point is, if you find yourself in the socialized healthcare systems of London, and you want to run out and get some Ozempic and some fish and chips, don't bother, because his fat little friend ate them all like a pot of orcas on a tuna vendor. But the point is... Right now, his poor friend is at home going, don't look at me. Oh, it feels like a decade ago that they threatened to suspend Amy's.
You're not going anywhere.
That long ago yesterday,
I've got your receipt. This is
since then, you've had the largest fraud ever given
still
the surrender of a trade war restart
double KO.
and the socializing of our
Judge, jury, executioner!
4 months ago, we were a standard issue Democratic constitutional republic. Now we're some kind of anarcho-klepto-socialist, communist, Silk Road reality show. The only foundational unchanging edict that we can even hang our hats on is that whatever we are now as a country, that country is closed to any refugee. As Stephen Miller said, America is now for Americans only. So hopefully there will be no more surprising announcements.
After pausing virtually all refugee admissions to those fleeing the war and the famine, the Trump administration is now planning to welcome one group, white South Africans.
Those guys are about to shoot at us.
White South Africans? That's the only group we're open. You already had one. Why? You know what, Mr. President? You don't need 37 South Africans. Now you'll make do with just
Don't mess with the amazing Spider-Man! This is real firepower!
Their land is being confiscated in South Africa. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight.
Judge, jury, executioner!
Oh, you care about their weight.
You know what? Being an American president is hard. People criticize your policies. They nitpick your moral deficiencies. Every time you even suggest removing habeas corpus, people start whining. Yeah, we need that. Boo. You know, sometimes you just want to go somewhere where people don't pick apart your flaws and they treat you like a king.
Overnight, President Trump touching down in Saudi Arabia, escorted by military jets. A lavish welcome for his first visit to the Middle East since his re-election.
The Saudi prince greeted him at the airport, and he got a horse escort into the Saudi palace.
What? A horse escort? I gotta say, when you hear that Trump got a horse escort, this is the best version of that story.
Pick your hero. I'm not judging.
But, I gotta tell you, Saudi Arabia, oh man, they went all out. It wasn't just the horse escort. They greeted Trump with a full brass band. That was really trying their best, you know? And then it was time for Trump to walk down the famous purple carpet. And so he walked. And he
Magneto raised me to never stop fighting
kept
for
walking.
what
You know, it feels
I
like you could have
believe
stayed in the car for
You
some.
don't
Oh,
have
now
to
we're taking
be
an
a witch
escalator.
to find
Great,
my
we're done, but no,
own
we're still walking.
30
Yep,
seconds before
that's
you
fine.
attack.
It's a cool
Get ready.
108 degrees. This guy can handle it. You know, Trump's looking at the carpet, going, these things fly here, right?
And I saw your unholy.
Don't they show me a whole new world or some shit like that? But look, a horse guard and purple carpets, that might impress leader. But Donald Trump, no average world leader. And Saudi Arabia knows how to cater to a man with such refined taste.
All you need to do
Saudi
is capture the
Arabia
mission area.
had a
Got it?
McDonald's mobile truck come on site so that President Trump could have his favorite McDonald's.
Perfect. Oh, I gotta tell you, it is nice to see they got another use out of the horses once they were. It's good to know. It's good. You gotta hand it to Saudis, though. They know the fastest way to Trump's heart is through his stomach, out the colon with a little bit stain behind his arm.
Area is yours to capture
Yeah,
now.
but not everything in the royal kingdom was to Trump's liking. Now, after they arrived, the Saudis served some coffee. But while everyone else drank theirs, Donald Trump just held his in his hand the whole time. Look at that, right? It looks like he was waiting to give a urine sample to the nurse. Yeah, I gotta say, I get this. Honestly, I get it. Unfamiliar coffee on a trip is risky. One sip is all it takes to go from traveler's constipation to traveler's, you guys go without me, I'm gonna hang out in the room for a while. Smart move. It's a smart move, Mr. President. You don't want to throw a wrench into that perfect gut biome you've created. Now, that being said, Trump maybe regretted not taking that caffeine shot a few minutes later.
Mohammed bin Salman is saying we need a resolution on a Palestinian state. And I don't necessarily recall several years ago, pre-October 7th, as that being a demand that he had necessarily stated publicly. Do you think his position has changed? Or do you think the way he has expressed himself has that changed?
Mr. President, come on, you can't fall asleep there. This isn't an intelligence briefing. Come on, man. Look, it's not actually a big deal for the president to have jet lag. I'm not so much of an asshole that I make fun of someone for nodding off a bit on a trip. You know who is that much of an asshole?
Joe Biden, the guy can fall asleep in Congress with the press watching. Who the hell wants to sleep with this baby watching? And he's out cold. You see the dribble coming down the side of the street.
Who's sleeping now? Joe Biden, you must be loving. Oh, he's passed out. Never mind. Of course, it's in the Saudis' interest to give Trump the royal. I'm sure the president of the United States understands that the Saudi crown prince is not without baggage. Just a few years ago, that he murdered an American journalist. So, I'm sure the president will keep a healthy distance from the crown prince.
I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much. I still want you. Too much. I like you too much.
This is real firepower!
Regardless, you know what? It was a very nice start to his trip abroad. We will visit not just Saudi Arabia, but then Qatar and then the UAE. You might be wondering, why did Trump pick these countries for his first foreign trip? Well, there's a strong geopolitical balance of... I'm f***ing with you!
Their team's captain has passed the halfway point.
Corruption!
His sons, who now run the Trump Organization, have lucrative real estate deals in the works in all the countries the president is visiting.
Yeah, the Trump boys have projects in all 3 countries. Really? I never thought I'd say this, but can't these countries go back to doing something more constructive, like fighting terrorism?
Chaos control!
Donald Trump doesn't see business conflicts problems. Many things taking conflicts to a new heights, as in heights like the sky.
Over the $400 million gift from the government of Qatar tonight, a luxury 747 jumbo jet to be used as Air Force One until the end of Trump's term, when the White House says it will be decommissioned and donated to the Trump Library.
You know, I think we could stop pretending that this airplane is going to be transferred to his presidential library. This is like the news reporting your aunt is bringing her good friend Linda to Thanksgiving. Don't lick cooter, people. That's what's happening, okay? Look, now apart from being a security concern and a potential bribe, it seems clearly unconstitutional to give the president a gift like this.
I've watched entire realities consumed by chaos. I won't let that happen again.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says the gift is, quote, legally permissible and not a bribe because Trump isn't giving Qatar anything in return.
30 seconds before you attack. Get ready.
Right? Trump hasn't given them anything, and it's been like 36 hours. You know, I trust her. She's the Attorney General. Just as a quick fact check. What did she do before she was the Attorney General?
We should point out that Bondi previously worked as a foreign lobbyist for the nation of Qatar, earning about $115,000 a month.
4, 3,
you know, it
2,
looks bad.
1.
But you have to understand that's a lot of money. And money feels good to have and to spend.
The barriers
so now
between dimensions are breaking
Today,
down.
Trump's visit to the Middle East brought him to Qatar. It's also acceptable to say Qatar. However, Qatar is not acceptable under any circumstances. Pick an instrument you since pop power. Now, yesterday, Saudi Arabia greeted Trump's forces. Today, Qatar said, oh, you think that? How about and careless, and motherfucking sword dancers. Yeah, whoa! That puts a lot of pressure on his trip tomorrow to the UAE. I'm in the sweat right now. We're just gonna give him an edible arrangement. What the f*** are we gonna do? Of course, Qatar didn't just give him a sword dance show. They also offered him a $400 million luxury jumbo jet. Now, this plane has become a huge controversy. Security risk, the optics are terrible, it's clearly unconstitutional, so you gotta wonder, why does Trump want it so bad?
And you know, these planes, the plane that you're on right now is almost 40 years old. UAE, and you see Qatar, and you see all this, and they have these brand new Boeing 747s, mostly. And you see ours next to it. It's much smaller, it's much less impressive. I believe that we should have the most impressive plane.
We still talking about planes? Look, we're on the tarmac next to each other, you know. I know you're not supposed to just look straight ahead, but I took a little peek over there, a little peek over there. It was huge, man. Bring on the it's getting a little embarrassing watching Trump fly around the Middle East eating sword dances and free jets. Maybe he's going to do any actual policy stuff.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
Wow.
Reborn from the chaos.
I spoke too soon? This seems like maybe actually a good idea. You know, Syria has just thrown off decades of dictatorship. Trump thinks the new government deserves a chance to find its feet free.
Maybe I was wrong.
Maybe I was wrong about this guy. You know, he doesn't just think about himself.
Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, reportedly offered to build a Trump tower in Damascus.
God damn it! God damn it! I spoke too soon about speaking too soon!
You undersea uglies!
But hey, you know what? Good on you, Syria, whatever it takes. You know what? PBS, maybe you could learn a lesson from this. Instead of whining about Trump cutting children's programming, have you thought of offering him a Trump tower on Sunday? You know? Could be a win-win. Well, let's move on. Just because Trump's out of the country doesn't mean his team isn't shaking things up at home. Today, the congressional hearing, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health Secretary, and Freeland Wetmark faced some tough questions about whether he wants his own children to be alive.
I think it might be helpful. You previously said you vaccinated your children. If you had a child today, would you vaccinate that child for measles?
Measles? Goodbye.
Immediately. Probably for measles. What I would say is my opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. I don't think people should be taking advice, medical advice from me. What did you do?
You know what? Call me an idealist, but it'd be nice if people could take medical advice from the health secretary. You know, maybe it's actually pretty good advice to not listen to RFK's advice. Because here's how he spent his weekends.
Robert Kennedy Jr. may be Secretary of Health and Human Services, but if you want to stay healthy, don't go swimming in a sewage-contaminated creek, and for sure don't take your grandkids in there.
That creek that RFK Jr. is splashing around in isn't exactly pristine. In fact, it's a sewer runoff that is polluted with widespread fecal contamination. Swimming and wading are banned. In this photo, RFK Jr. is totally submerged.
Whoa. Hey. RFK promised us he'd find the cause of autism, remember? I mean, at this point, it's like RFK Jr. is going out of his way to be gross. Does he just go on Google Maps and search disgusting things near me? These pictures are so wild. The fact that he was swimming in jeans is the most normal part of this story. Maybe if he was just taking a fecal dip himself, we'd let it slide. But he brought his grandkids. And as a parent, there's a whole new level of grandkids It's just like, we asked you guys to give the kids candy. Not, we asked you not to take them swimming in E. coli-tainted sewage runoff. Conservatives are sending really mixed messages about protecting children. They're like, kids shouldn't be at drag shows. They should be bobbing for apples in a porta potty. And listen, it's not lost on me that there is a whole other story here about how America just has bodies of water out in the open filled with sewage and human shit.
Peace to this universe.
That is definitely something we should look into and fix.
Magneto raised
But
me
until
to
we
never
do,
stop fighting.
don't go
I believe.
fucking swimming in them. This morning,
I will
Donald
bring
Trump
peace
said
to this
goodbye
universe.
to Qatar, but not before making an appearance at an American military base where he sashayed for the soldiers. Oh, look at that. That's sexy, right? Oh, that's sexy, yeah. Show the boys what we're fighting for over there, right? Sexy baby. And of course, Trump once again was serenaded in person by proud-to-be an American singer Lee Greenwood. Which begs the question, did Donald Trump kidnap Lee Greenwood? I get having him sing at a campaign rally, but dragging him all the way to Qatar? Is Greenwood like that Mad Max guitarist? You know, is he just chained to Trump's podium at this point? Lee, are you being held against your will? If you are, give us a sign. Struggle to hit the high note. He needs help. Someone call Lee. Mel Gibson, probably. He'll do it, yes. Anyway, after blue-balling our troops, Trump was off to the United Arab Emirates, the country Americans always click on accidentally on the drop-down menu. Remember when we used to be at the top all the time? You know what? You want to win my vote? Make that your campaign promise. America first on the drop-down menu. I'll vote for that every time. No, and as we've discussed, been discussing all week, Trump has been receiving a huge welcome at each stop on this tour. Saudi Arabia gave him a horse guard. Qatar gave him horses and camels and a sword dancing ceremony. UAE got a lot to live up. Show it with you. Group audition for a pancake. Is that a threat? Look, this wasn't a sightseeing trip. Trump was there. The main event of the day. Roundtable with some of America's top defense contractors. A chance for Trump to be focused on selling American goods. So, make that sales pitch and bring it home.
We're coming up with a new system of drones because drones are really, if you look at the war that's going on, it's horrible. When you look at what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, the drone is killing tremendous numbers of people. You hide behind a tree and the drone comes down and it circles you with fire. You don't have a chance. And the tree comes down also, by the way. It's so intense. I mean, you see these trees being knocked down like they're being sawed down by a top-of-the-line timberman, like, you know, Sean Duffy.
This is about drones. We're getting off track here. Not about trees or the timberman, so let's get back to the drones. Forget about Sean Duffy.
Do you know that Sean Duffy, the head of the transportation department, who's working right now on the airports and getting the system because Biden didn't do a thing for 4 years.
Airports. Joe Biden.
Disappearing.
Shit. I know what's about to happen. Okay, everyone stay calm. We're entering a weave. Okay. All right.
That's the weave.
Buckle up, everyone. The man's been up for 4 days. This is a jet lag weave. All right, this could get bumpy.
Biden didn't do a thing for 4 years, and Pete Buttigieg was the head, and he goes bicycling to work. He takes a bicycle to work. Can you believe he's running the biggest air system in the world, and he takes a bicycle to work.
So Pete Buttigieg should have taken a plane to work.